thanks for that, Zoe. Yeah, my name's Natasha. I'm lead nurse for diabetes and endocrinology at Leeds Teaching Hospitals. I have to apologise in advance because I've been on leave and didn't get a lot of notice, unfortunately, for this. So what I suggest we do is I'm going to play a short video that's just available on YouTube. So I know this has been recorded, but if you ever want to go back to it, then the link just take it should, if it works, fingers crossed, go straight to YouTube. And then what I was going to do was be guided by participants, really, and just so have a questions and answers a bit of it, and if there's anything else we need to bring in, I can bring it in. Does that sound all right for the moment?
Absolutely.
Perfect. If it's a silence, I'll just go with it. Okay, now I'm going to try the tricky part and try and share my screen, so just bear with me. Right. Tell me if anybody can see anything. It's gone very dark my side. I can't see anything at the minute. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can.
Perfect. Okay, now the next thing, where my heart's in my mouth at the minute, wondering whether my link's going to work. But anyway, let's have a look. I'm trying to do it as a slideshow from the beginning. Okay, so as I've just said, I work here at Leeds, and I'm the lead nurse for this service. We provide outpatients and inpatient cover for our patients living with diabetes, and this is the first time I've been asked to do anything regarding staff and wellbeing, so it's quite exciting. And I'm very pleased that there's an hour dedicated to this because it's really important. I haven't actually put my contact details on there, but my email's really straightforward. It's just my name, no dots or anything, at nhs.net. So if anybody wants anything at any time to do with diabetes or endocrinology, you're more than welcome to contact me. I'm happy to help. Okay, so please God, let this work. Right, let's see if this is going to work. Oh, there you go. Sound.
We're going to explain how your body processes the food you eat in order to provide all your body cells with the energy they need. And also what happens when you have diabetes and this system doesn't work properly. When you eat food that contains carbohydrate, it's broken down in the stomach and digestive system into glucose, which is a type of sugar. We need glucose from food because that's what gives us energy. Carbohydrate containing foods are things like starchy foods, sugary foods, milk and some dairy products, and fruit. This glucose then moves into the bloodstream and the body detects that the blood glucose level is rising. In response to that, the pancreas, which is a little gland that sits just underneath the stomach, starts to release a hormone called insulin. And it's insulin that helps our body get the energy from the food we eat. The bloodstream then takes the glucose and the insulin to every cell in our body that needs it. To make this easier to understand, let's look at muscle cells. At the muscle cells, it's insulin that allows the glucose to get into the cells where it can be used for energy. It's a bit like insulin is a key unlocking the door to the cells so the glucose can get in. That way, the blood glucose level starts to drop. But the blood glucose level can be topped up at any point by the liver releasing extra glucose that it has stored. The blood glucose rises again, and again the pancreas produces more insulin to move with that glucose through the bloodstream to the muscle cells, open the doors and let the glucose in. The body functions best with the blood glucose at an optimum level. It doesn't like it if the blood glucose rises too high. Normally, there's a cycle within the body which balances out the glucose and the insulin level, and this is achieved by the food you eat, the pancreas and the liver. However, in some people, the system doesn't work properly and they develop diabetes. There are two main types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. In type 1 diabetes, the body isn't making any insulin at all. This is because of an autoimmune response whereby the body has destroyed the insulin producing cells in the pancreas. We don't entirely know why that happens in some people and not in others. Type 1 diabetes accounts for about 10% of all cases. It's most often found in the under 40s, and it's by far the most common type of diabetes found in childhood. In type 1 diabetes, the carbohydrate containing food is broken down into glucose as normal. That glucose then moves into the bloodstream. Normally, the body would produce insulin to let that glucose into the cells, but in type 1 diabetes, there is no insulin being produced, so the glucose can't get into the body cells at all. So the level of glucose in the blood rises and rises. The body tries to lower the level of glucose, it tries to get rid of the glucose through the kidneys. That's why people who have undiagnosed type 1 diabetes tend to go to the toilet a lot to pass urine. As the kidneys filter the glucose out of the blood, they also take a lot of water with it. So the person with diabetes will get very thirsty. The urine contains a lot of glucose, and that creates an environment where it's quite easy for bacteria to thrive. So it's also quite common to get thrush or genital itching. In the same way, the blood contains a high level of glucose as well. So more bacteria than usual will tend to breed in flesh wounds, and they might be slow to heal. Glucose can also build up in the lens at the front of the eye, causing the liquid in the lens to become cloudy. That can mean that some people with undiagnosed type 1 diabetes can have blurred vision. Because the glucose can't get into the cells to be used for energy, somebody who's got undiagnosed type 1 diabetes is going to start feeling very tired, lethargic, and unable to sort of go about their normal daily routine. But the body still needs an energy source in order to work properly. So what it does is it starts to break down its fat stores, and that can lead to weight loss. So the main symptoms of type 1 diabetes are going to the toilet a lot, thirst, thrush or genital itching, slow healing of wounds, blurred vision, tiredness, and weight loss. These symptoms generally happen quite quickly, often over a few weeks, and can be reversed once the diabetes is treated with insulin. Type 2 diabetes accounts for about 90% of all cases in the population. It's most common in the over 40 age group in the white population, and in the over 25 age group in the South Asian population. Type 2 diabetes is a little more complex because there's slightly more processes at work. Either the body isn't producing quite enough insulin, or the insulin it is producing isn't working properly. That can be due to being overweight because a build-up of fat can stop insulin doing its job properly, but it can also happen in people of a healthy weight. So in type 2 diabetes, the carbohydrate containing food is broken down into glucose in the stomach and digestive system as normal. That glucose then moves into the bloodstream. The pancreas starts to produce insulin, which moves with the glucose through the bloodstream to all the body cells which need glucose for energy. However, the glucose can't always get into the cells because the locks to the cell doors have become furred up with fat deposits. That means that the insulin can't open the cell doors properly. So the level of glucose in the blood continues to rise. In response to this, the pancreas produces even more insulin. So the blood glucose levels continue to rise and the insulin levels continue to rise. This situation is further complicated by the cells, which are desperate for energy, sending out emergency signals to the liver to release stored glucose. The blood glucose
So has everybody else lost the sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
The sound come back?
Not yet.
No.
It's odd, isn't it, that it just plays for a while?
Try again.
Thanks. There's only a couple more minutes left of it anyway.
There's still no sound, James.
If you want to let it play, I can speak over it if you want.
Yeah, if you could please.
Yeah, it's probably easier, isn't it? Where have we got up to? So they're just talking about different types, aren't they? Up to, let's see where we're up to now. It's difficult to start halfway through. So talking about type 2 diabetes, the treatment for type 2 diabetes, maybe the first line treatment would be looking at looking at diet and exercise and lifestyle, and then moving on to looking at medication to treat it. This is different from type 1 diabetes. It's finished now, so I can stop that now if you wish. Okay, sorry about that, everybody, but we managed to muddle through a little bit. So basically, just to summarise, I just felt that had that worked properly, it was a good starter, because it's different. It's different on the. It's difficult a little bit on this to know where to pitch this. So to give a basic anatomy and physiology, sort of a clinical aspect of what diabetes is, very, very loosely. It is a little bit more complex than a 9-minute YouTube video, but it gives you an idea. There's bits on that video now. That video is quite old now. There is a more up-to-date one with Philip Schofield, but it's actually not as good as that one. So the main points in that one, which are slightly different now, is to be aware of prejudices around people living with diabetes. So just because somebody has type 2 diabetes, you know, there are prejudices that sit around that. Equally with type 1. It did talk about 10% of the population generally having type 1 and 90% of the population having type 2. That is very broad, and there's other types of diabetes that do fit in there, and obviously would need to add up to 100%. So it's not technically 90 and 10, but to give you a broad overview, that's useful. And now, because we have an older population, and because treatments for diabetes have advanced massively over the last, well, I'd say 10 years, people with type 1 diabetes, the population who are elderly and living in, for example, care homes or requiring neighbourhood team support, is vastly increasing. So, and we do know that patients over the age of 40 get diagnosed regularly with type 1 diabetes. So that is a little bit, I wouldn't say a myth, but it's certainly definitely not unheard of to get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes after the age of 40. It is predominantly the main cause of diabetes, the main type of diabetes in childhood. But as the video alluded to, ethnicity plays a large part as well. So we do see patients with a large proportion of our patients with type 2 diabetes who are over the age, of 25 in the South Asian population in particular. To confuse matters, there are other little subtypes of diabetes. For example, if you're pregnant, you may have diabetes, something called gestational diabetes. That will disappear hopefully when you deliver the child, although you'll become more at risk of developing type 2 later in later life if you've had gestational diabetes. Obviously, patients living with type 1 diabetes and patients living with type 2 diabetes have babies, so we do look after patients who are pregnant, who have pre-existing diabetes as well. I think so that's sort of like a broad overview. I would be interested to hear from people on the call if there's anything particular. I mean, I can go on about diabetes forever and a day and I bore you all silly, but if I want you to get the most out of this, so is there anything you particularly want me to focus on about living with diabetes in the workplace, challenges people might face, how we can support?
If people aren't able to speak because they're in a busy office, please feel free to use the chat as well. So a lot of our at work, you know, obviously given the statistics we're talking about before, people live with, there's a large percentage of the population who live with diabetes on a day-to-day basis, and that's going to impact on our population at work here at LTHT. Speaking to people who live with a long-term condition. Oh, somebody wants to speak, sorry.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I was saying I work in finance here at the Trust. I mean, I've been type 1 diabetic for like nearly 30 years now. I would say everybody here that I work with is aware, you know, of my condition. They're used to me getting me jab out or whatever. I have a joke, I'm just shooting up now, you know, that sort of thing. They're aware that obviously if my sugar drops, I need to get food, and so yeah, I basically in the workplace I have had no problems whatsoever, or found any discrimination, or you know.
I think that's really lovely to hear. Oh, I can hear myself. That's horrible. So it's really good to hear that, and that you're living. I wonder, Catherine, would you be able to turn your microphone off? I don't know whether it's echoing. That's better, thank you. It is really lovely to hear. We are conscious as a team and as healthcare professionals looking after patients with this long-term condition, is that a lot of individuals, well, a large percentage of people may not tell work colleagues that they are living with type 1 or type 2, and that presents a problem. You highlight quite a good point, Catherine, is that your colleagues are aware. They probably, I'm hoping they're aware of how to treat a hypo. If not, I can go through all of that now, because I think that might be a pertinent point to talk about. But that's a really good relationship to have with your colleagues, because if they feel that you're unwell, they're going to have an idea of where to go to. And given that you're not clinical, you don't work in a clinical team, it's a really good thing to hear. We're not immune from the condition ourselves working in diabetes. I've worked with colleagues who have type 1, and it is massively beneficial to be able to support our colleagues that we know. But I do have to emphasize that not everybody wants people to know at work, and we do have, particularly with our young adult cohorts, they don't necessarily want student colleagues, they don't necessarily want colleagues to know, friends to know they've got diabetes, and it's about us delivering care and support to them to be able to say, actually, it might be a good idea, especially if you're out for a few drinks, that somebody is aware. But at the end of the day, it's patient choice, isn't it? Individual choice about what you want to share. I was just looking at a comment in the chat from Claire. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in July last year. My manager and the team I work with have been great support as well. That's really, really nice. Would it be beneficial? It is difficult, because I don't want to breach confidentiality or what have you, but we can talk about hypo management and hyper management. So I think that would be, if I put my manager head on rather than my diabetes head on, that would be what I would be concerned about. How would I deal with potentially somebody having hypo? Sorry, somebody's got a hand up. I couldn't see that before.
Oh, sorry, I'm happy to wait, Natasha.
Okay.
Whenever it's convenient.
Okay. So I think Catherine was a good example. Sorry, Catherine, to pick on you now, but you're a good example. If you're going a bit low, what we would recommend is fast-acting dextrose. So fast-acting dextrose tablets, or full sugar pop, or juice. And it would be up to an individual, a staff member like Catherine, to say to her colleagues, sounds like you've got quite a good open relationship, that if I am going low, I need this to treat me. I was in a situation many years ago when I was very junior diabetes nurse, and I wasn't at work, I was out socializing. It was a lovely sunny day, and we were in a pub garden, and somebody was having a hypo, and somebody was very, very helpful and went rushing in and said, no, I can't give him full sugar Coke, I've got to give him Diet Coke, he's got diabetes. Diet Coke won't touch the side if you're having a hypo. You need as much sugar as you can throw into you, and I'm sure, Catherine, you can appreciate that. So it's about education, and whilst this person was very mortified that I was saying we needed to give full sugar Coke, because trying to tell me that the patient couldn't have it, although they're having a hypo and they've got a blood sugar of about 3, it's about educating. Most people that have diabetes will monitor their blood sugars. Any blood sugar less than 4 is not normal, and that needs to be treated. So that's 4's the floor is what we talk about. So 4's the floor, it's too low. Anything less than 4, we need to be having sugar. If the only thing you can get hold of is, I don't know, some boiled sweets, that as long as they can take them, that's fine. But ideally something that's easy to swallow. So dextrose tablets, fast-acting sugar such as fresh orange juice, or like I say, pop. Be careful of things like Lucozade, because Lucozade, we always used to recommend Lucozade, we don't anymore. When I was a kid, Lucozade used to come in an orange bottle with cellophane, that just shows how old I am, cellophane, and you always had it when you were poorly because it was loaded with sugar. When the sugar tax came in, whenever that was, a few years ago, SmithKline Beecham, who make Lucozade, decided they didn't want to be taxed, so they took the sugar out of a lot of their drinks. So we don't recommend Lucozade as routine anymore. Some of the Lucozade concoctions, because there's so many of them, aren't there? Some of them are all right, but general rule of thumb, fresh orange would be better. Okay, we don't say chocolate. Does anybody want to say why? Does anybody want to put people on the spot now? Does anybody know why we don't advise chocolate in the first instance to treat a hypo?
Because of the fat content, it takes longer for it to turn into glucose.
Absolutely. So it will bring your blood sugar up, but it'll just take too long. So have the dextrose tablets, the fast-acting sugar first, and then have some chocolate if you want to, and your blood sugar will go sky high. But the problem is when you're hypo, I don't know whether anybody wants to comment who's living with diabetes, but when you're hypo, there's an expression, you could eat the fridge. You're absolutely starving, your body's craving anything, and you just want to eat as much as you can. It's a bit like me after work, but you know, you want to eat as much as you can. So it's very difficult to sometimes rein yourself back if you've had a severe hypo, because you tend to overtreat it. I'm just looking at the comments. I got diagnosed with type 2 and put on medication, but I'm still in doubt with regards to all of this. I haven't really been told anything about it and what I can have and what I can't have. Just got given the meds and then left until I have pushed for a meeting now with diabetes nurse to help me out, support from my manager who told me to come for this. I don't know whether, Sharon, do you want to speak? I understand if you don't, but I can certainly speak generically about that. I'm more than happy to support you out of this meeting. If you would like to email me, please do give me a shout. The way diabetes care is commissioned in the city is that Leeds teaching hospitals will look after anybody with type 1 and anyone with complex type 2. So, for example, what I mean by complex type 2, I would say somebody living with type 2 diabetes who perhaps is on renal dialysis, perhaps has got a foot ulcer, or who is pregnant. But otherwise, type 2 diabetes is commissioned to be looked after by primary care. We know that's not ideal, and we know there are gaps in the service. Feel as supporting staff and wellbeing week.
Sorry, have I done something there?
That was very good. Shut me up. So yeah, but supporting staff and wellbeing week, if anybody wants to contact me or my team, more than happy to give some generic advice. We can also advise about medications we wouldn't be able to prescribe because you're not under our care, but we could certainly give you some advice. I know it's difficult, and especially over the last couple of years, which has been challenging for everybody, to get appointments in primary care has been particularly difficult. So as a member of staff, I'd be more than happy to speak to anybody outside this meeting. And there's two of you in the chat there have left similar comments, so please do feel free to contact me or speak now if you want to. I totally understand if you don't. Sorry, who had the hand up again? I've lost the plot a bit now. Diane, sorry.
It was me. So I was diagnosed as type 1 in my very late 30s, told it was very unusual. I think similar to, I think it was Sharon's, the support at work is really good. People are really nice. Good. I tell everybody I'm with because I think people need to know. My bit at work is about lack of understanding if I hypo. So I carry jelly babies with me everywhere I go because jelly babies for me are the easiest thing. 3 of those and it'll shoot it straight up. For me, it's that lack of understanding. If you're hypo, it'll take a few minutes to come round and for your brain to start working properly again. So you can't really concentrate, you can't think clearly. So for me, my only slight downside about working with type 1 diabetes is if I'm going into a meeting, which might be a few hours long, I will deliberately keep my sugars high. Because to hypo in that, people don't understand if I suddenly get jelly babies out. So my plea really across the trust would be, I think what you said, Natasha, is about education. Yeah. People need to understand that if you are diabetic and you are hypoing, you need to stop for a few minutes and get your sugars up. And that understanding is just not there. And even though people are nice about it, if you get jelly babies out in the middle of a meeting, people people don't understand. So that's my really big.
They're going to want you to share them.
Well, they do. When I go to the gym, everybody calls me Jelly Baby now. But it's just in meetings that it can be difficult because people do not understand, and it's the education for me of everybody else, and not just people who are living with diabetes, that's important.
I think it's really interesting, and it's good sort of to have this forum, I suppose, to be able to raise awareness like this, because we don't, as a service, we haven't traditionally had a lot to do with educating teams about staff members. Now we've got a barrier with that because of confidentiality, obviously, and you know, patient has to give consent, of which you'd be the patient, Diane, of course. I'm more than happy to explore, staffing levels permitting, she said very quickly, but I'm more than happy to explore if there are particular teams that would like some sort of, I don't know, personalised education around, particularly, Diane, as you say, around hypo management, which I think is the main fear, and to why Diane's bringing out a big packet of Jelly Babies and she won't give any, you know, whether there is something about that. I think the way to do it would have to be, I might need to speak to occupational health and people, I don't know, sort of teams like HR and see how we do it, but would it be, I don't know, put it out there, would it be led by the member of staff, Diane, such as yourself, to say, well, I've spoken to my manager, we'd like this, or how do we go about this? I'm perfectly happy to have suggestions.
Yeah, so I work in HR. This is not about meetings within my team. So this is not about, for me, it's just about a level of knowledge with everybody in the trust, really, so that if you go to a meeting and you feel your sugar's dropping, that you can get your jelly, whatever it is. Lots of things. I always use Jelly Babies. It's that really. What's that?
No, it's not me.
So it's that really for me, and yeah, like I said, my way to cope with that is I can't keep my sugars high, which is not ideal really, but that's to make sure I don't hypo in a meeting.
And you're certainly not the only person that will do that. And when you come to clinic or you go and see your healthcare professional and say, why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that. But do you know what? It's real life, and it's living with something like type 1 in real life isn't like a textbook. And like, you know, we can play videos, you know, like I did at the beginning of this, but you're living with it. And I joked before about me living and breathing it. I'm not, you are. I live it when I come to work, but you're living it 24/7, and it's difficult. You don't need me to tell you this, but it doesn't always play the game, does it? You can do everything right and it still goes off the boil for whatever reason.
I mean, I will shut up in a minute, but for me, there's so many worse things. For me, it's a manageable condition. It is just some of the little bits that if people understood a bit better, it would be easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's a really easy task, isn't it? I just need to educate every single member of staff in the trust.
or a screensaver or something.
Screensavers. Have you any idea what the wait time is for screensavers? No, I'm pulling your leg.
Have you got a document or anything?
So we deliver on IP. Does everybody know what IPP is? So Introduction to Professional Practice. So we have and we deliver on that, I think it's twice a month. I can't remember now. Pre-pandemic, it used to be face-to-face. We do it virtually now. In fact, my dietitian colleagues deliver on it. That is for any new starter to the trust, so introduction to professional practice. That would be, slides from that would be quite useful. We do run things like Hypo Awareness Week. We do Insulin Safety Week. Insulin Safety Week's more clinical. A lot of the stuff we do is more around patient care, obviously. So, you know, awareness weeks are all about patient care, really. Hypo Awareness Week, it's a difficult one, that one, because it's how we do it. So pre-pandemic, we've done stalls in Gledhow Wing and Jubilee Wing and places like that. And staff members do come up, but it's a bit, we're not really sure whether we're doing something that's beneficial. So if you've got any bright ideas, please do let me know.
I'm just thinking on the Health and Wellbeing website, we have got sort of internal support, and one of the tabs on there is for long-term conditions.
Okay.
Thinking if you've got maybe a PDF or something like that, we can put that on the website so it's readily available to people.
I think we aim to start, I'm thinking too big. I think we do small. So I do something around hypos. and we give you something. I don't think I have PDF, but I'll have a slide or something that I can give you.
I can change it. Yeah.
Okay, so I can have a little look at that and see if that would be beneficial to staff. It would be really lovely to know what people do want. So I know from the health and wellbeing team that you do sort of put questionnaires out and things like that. But we, like I said at the beginning of this, we've never been involved in this way before, and I think it's what will be most beneficial to staff. We've got patient stuff coming out of our ears, but what would be actual benefit to staff coming to work every single day, how we can support. I think Diane's highlighted a really good point, that it is around understanding, and that if you do have a hypo, you're going to feel like you've been hit by a bus for a good half an hour or so before you start getting your thoughts together again. Also to recognise perhaps if somebody has blood sugar is going low, and they're maybe talking like I am now and suddenly start saying some weird things, or start, mind you, I do that all the time anyway, or maybe not concentrating or looking a bit weird, an awareness of that, but at the same time understanding that many people live with long-term conditions such as diabetes, and it's about sort of getting on with life, isn't it?
I think around hypos and hypers, and I think I can sort of resonate. My mum's got diabetes insipidus.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when that first came about, it was scary seeing her go like you do, and I think it's having that confidence to deal with it when it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Scary.
And understanding there's lots of different treatments out there. Lots and lots of different insulins, for example. Non-clinical staff don't need to know what the different insulins do. What you need, as in each different insulin, you need to understand if you give insulin, it brings your blood sugar down. Full stop. You don't need to know any more than that. To have insulin, blood sugar will come down, because that's what also has been a myth, that give insulin if somebody's having a hypo. Well, you obviously don't, but it's about a little bit of understanding. So if somebody's blood sugar's low, what do they need? They need fast-acting sugar and some longer-acting carbohydrate afterwards to keep the blood sugar up. If their blood sugars are running high, that's a little bit more tricky, but it's about a conversation or the person understanding, why are they high? Is it because I've had my lunch and I forgot to take my insulin? It's not something for hyperglycemia management in the workplace isn't just a one-liner. It's about individualized care, and that's why it's a little bit tricky. But I think we could do something generic for your website for staff to access it. Oh yeah, you put it on there. Is there anything else that anybody's thought about that you want me to touch on? So Desmond, so I've just been asked, Diane's just asked in the chat, do we run Desmond for people with type 2? Desmond is a educational course for people who are living with type 2 diabetes. We don't run Desmond in Leeds. I can't remember what Desmond stands for now, but we run something called the Leeds programme. Well, we do. I said Royal Leeds Community Healthcare are commissioned to run that. So Leeds stands for whatever Leeds stands for, and it's as it says, it's an education programme for people living with type 2. They're commissioned to deliver that, so you would be referred to that from your GP. I should know, but at the moment I'm guessing they're running it virtually, but I don't know, is my answer, because I don't work for LTH, but I'm pretty sure they're running that virtually. Claire says she's attended it virtually. Marvellous. Glad somebody's been. So the equivalent to type 1, Diane, you're ahead of me. So we are commissioned to deliver the equivalent of type 1, which is called DAPHNE, and DAPHNE stands for dose adjustment for normal eating. So not Daphne with a PH that I often see, it's F meaning 4. So the dose adjustment for normal eating, it's a nationally recognised programme. We pay to be able to deliver it. We have to go through rigorous training to be able to deliver it. You can't just do it. Not all of my staff are DAPHNE trained. I'm not. So we have 3 nurses who are DAPHNE trained, and we have 3 3 specialist dietitians who are Daphne trained, and well, Diane can probably tell you how good I think it's good, but we get some really good feedback from that. It's quite intense. We like to run it face to face. Obviously, we've not been able to in the pandemic, and that is usually run Monday to Friday, and they're full days. So we provide lunch, life changing. Thanks, Diane.
It really was. It was so good.
It's very intense.
Really,
no, please do. It's very intense, though, isn't it?
It is. It's just the best thing I've ever done, if I'm brutally honest. I mean, it's 5 days. It was a full week. Yeah, but I presume Desmond or the equivalent is just as good for people with type 2. It's just that you just need that time to concentrate on your own health. Really good.
You do. The main differences, just to keep it really basic, between the education for type 2 and the education for type 1 is I suppose it's carb counting and carb awareness. So we talk more about carbohydrate awareness in type 2 and actual carbohydrate counting to match insulin doses in type 1. So it's a bit, whilst they come under the umbrella of diabetes, we sometimes as specialist nurses talk about them as separate disease processes because the education is slightly different. So yeah, the LEADS program is accredited and it gets good response as well. We get a lot of people through that. Daphne, as you say, is Monday to Friday full days. The places on there's 8 slots per day per course, sorry, 8, so we can't see a lot of people. Virtually, I haven't had a lot of involvement with it over the pandemic because the dietitians took it over to deliver it virtually. I would say from the feedback I've seen, people want face-to-face, but I think generally that's the feel that I'm getting from patients anyway. People want face-to-face. Everybody's bored of this pandemic and wants to see people, and I do think education courses, if I'm honest, we've suffered with education courses because there's only so much you can get over this means of Teams. It's not, you don't get the body language, you don't pick up the clues that you would do in the room like you did, Diane, when you came here to do Daphne, you know, and you don't have the relationships you build up with the other course participants, which are really helpful in a lot of cases. So fingers crossed we'll be able to start delivering Daphne again on a face-to-face basis. Catherine did Daphne 9 years ago. Can you remember all the principles, Catherine? I was going to call you Daphne, Catherine.
I'm going to spell it D-A-P-H.
I
know. Oh gosh, I must admit, all the books and everything I did chuck out. I thought, oh, I don't need this. You know, I am guilty though of. I must admit, I don't like write my readings down or anything like that. I've got very complacent that way. I think because I've had it so long.
Yes.
But I do have with me now having the freestyle discs now. Obviously, I can see how it's going up and down.
Do you want to tell people what that is?
Oh, the
Libra.
The Libra, the scanning discs.
Yeah, because that might be useful actually to share that, because from a patient, I mean, I can talk about it, but if you talk about it's better, because then patient, maybe sort of within the staff environment, if people see people with this on and what they're doing with their phones, because then you need your phone, don't you? Do you want to explain it?
Yeah, I'll say I've got, put my camera on. So underneath my top here is a disc, which every 2 weeks you have to change, and there's an app, the Freestyle app, and it enables you to, like, there's a very small needle within the disc, which I didn't realise. I've only been using this system for about 4 months, and basically it's a contraption which you have to screw in and it clumps together, and you like basically like plunge it into your arm, and it sits there for 2 weeks. So I think what it does is obviously it's there keeping the sensor of like your blood sugars or just underneath, just below the skin surface. Yep. And then this app on your phone, once you set it all up, tap on check glucose. It was a bit blurry for you there. and it scans it, and my sugar is 15.3, and that's because I've had a donut because it's someone's birthday. And I thought, that's great, I'm going on this diabetes talk.
It's all right,
you did eating a donut.
You haven't told me. I'm not here as it's fine. I'm here as a member of staff, not as well. But you can, I suppose, what this helps is people to understand that, especially clinical staff who are living with type 1, who may need their phones on them on the ward to be able just to scan the disc. But it's a good example of how much technology has developed. So you're not having to prick your finger, Catherine, at the moment, except if that broke, you'd have to have a backup. But you're not having to prick your finger. You don't need me to tell you about how sore your fingers get when you prick your fingers all the time, and if you've had diabetes for a while. So the Libre is life-changing, but I suppose in the workplace it's a really good point you raise, because people might just wonder, what on earth is she doing, getting out a phone all the time and doing that to her arm, but in the end it is life-changing, Libre, isn't it? It is a really, really good device.
Yeah.
And
you can also obviously say it gives you averages, so you can see it from like week, every 2 weeks, every month, or you can see the pattern. And I think as well with it sort of gives you, your HbA1c blood test that you have every few months. It sort of gives you an average of that, although it's not properly as accurate as the actual blood test, but it sort of tells you as well how your long range is doing.
I think it's really good for self-management, isn't it? Because it gives you something, Catherine, to aim for, so you've got it. So if you've been having lots of blood sugars of 15, but then you've been really sort of looking at your insulin dose, thinking, I need to just do this a bit more. And, life gets in the way, we all get laps about things in life, and you just think, I need to tighten up on this. So you tighten up on that. And then you say, actually, my HbA1c, my predicted HbA1c is coming down. How good's that? You don't have to wait for your next clinic appointment, especially in the pandemic, wait for your next clinic appointment or wait for your next HbA1c, because although it's not as accurate, it gives you a ballpark figure, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Of what's going on. Yeah. And then getting back to you not writing things down. You don't need to write things down anymore. We have the technology, so it's all on your phone. It all goes up to just for people that don't know, it goes up to a little cloud in the sky, and that means that if I logged on to my Libre now, I would be able to have a look at Catherine's results for us. So if we are doing a lot more virtual clinics, which we are, we can see all your readings, and it saves you sitting. So if we ring you up, Catherine, and we say, let me know what your readings are like, you'll say, well, at 8 o'clock this morning it was this, and you read them all out. It's so tedious. It's tedious for us, it's tedious for you, but when we log on, we can see your graphs. There's loads of information, isn't there? Have you been on LibreView? Have you seen it? Yeah. There's a lot. There's a bit too much sometimes. I know what I can understand, which graphs I want to look at to be quick, and I think you get to learn which one means more to you, but it's all there. So technology is amazing. It's really supported people with diabetes. So people living with type 1 are eligible. So I'll go on to this bit, which might be the white elephant in the room, and who can have Libre, because obviously it costs. So it's people generally who are living with type 1 who can have a Libre, who are funded with the Libre. Moving forward into the future, everybody will be able to have it. It's a glorified blood glucose machine, but at the moment, NHS England is only funding those with type 1. Generally, there are some other special groups. So pregnancy, while you're pregnant, you can have one, but so at the moment, patients living with type 2 can't. However, you can self-fund if you want to, Claire, because that was timing. So if you want to self-fund, you can. It's not cheap. The best thing to do with that is to go on the Abbott website. Abbott are the company that make Libre. If you go on there, contact their customer services, they'll be able to tell you. I haven't looked recently about how much it is to buy if I was buying, because obviously NHS prices are different. So when I did look, this was a good while ago, it works out for 2 sensors a month, it would work out about £90. So it's not cheap. And at the beginning, even less than who's funded now to have it were allowed it. So what people were doing were, and this is about 6-7 years ago, people were just buying it. If they didn't meet the criteria for funding, they were just maybe buying it for a couple of months. Then if they had to they were saving for a holiday, they'd not buy Libra for a while, save for a holiday instead, or maybe if it was Christmas or a birthday coming up they had to save for, they wouldn't buy Libra. We're not in that position so much now, we are moving forward with it. Diabetes UK, as the registered charity, is really pushing for all commissioning groups to be able to fund it for everybody, but it's the same argument that it always is in healthcare about there's not an infinite pot of money, unfortunately, and diabetes funding sits within all long-term conditions, unfortunately.
My mum read something in the paper the other day that she says that for all diabetics, is there some implant or something that's going to be available? Which
to do what? To monitor blood glucose?
I think so. Yeah.
I've not heard. There was an implant that was. There was an implant that was launched by, I think, Roche, one of the companies. We didn't ever go with it, and it isn't commissioned. And this was it was a good couple 3-4 years ago. The main reason was it was the training for staff to put it in. So it's like going, when you if you go to GP surgery for minor surgery, it was for that sort of thing, and the commissioning around it was too much. I don't know about accuracy of it either, so I won't be able to comment about it. We don't have any. We have a big research department here at Leeds, and I'm not aware of any research that's going on into that at the moment. It may just have been. I don't know. Maybe it was just something in the newspapers. I don't know.
Yeah, they pick up on these things, don't
they?
They
do.
It's an instant cure or whatever.
Absolutely, and it's good headlines. It's good headlines, isn't it? So Diane's popped in the chat that she did a clinical trial for Libra and it didn't like it for me, and that's a really good point, because what I was going to say was it isn't right for everyone, and we do have people that try it, and a number, not small numbers, a significant number of people that just don't like it. So whilst it works for you, Catherine, it works for a lot of people, it's not right for everybody else. And I think some people do feel that it was going to be the solution, it was going to solve everything, but it isn't. It's a blood glucose machine at the end of the day, or interstitial fluid glucose machine. It's not technically blood, but so I think whilst technology, I would really be an advocate of technology for supporting people with diabetes. It's only right for certain people. Just bear with me 1 second. Sorry. So yeah, any other questions while you've got me? I'm conscious of time. 5 minutes, I think.
I've just got a really quick one, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Back to the diabetes insipidus. I know it's separate, but is that treated more like type 1 or type 2 or?
Yeah. So like type 1.
Type 1.
Yeah, generally. Generally, that's diagnosed in our endocrinology department, which is now level 2. So diabetes centre, just in case people want, I should have said this at the beginning, diabetes centre is on the ground floor in Beckett Wing, where all the horrible blooming scaffolding is at the moment, and no car parking, but that's another issue. And then endocrine day unit is on level 1 Beckett Wing. Now, they used to be in Chancellor's pre-pandemic, but they're now where they should be with diabetes. So any sort of thing endocrine or diabetes related, that's where we are.
What I'm tempted to do is stop the recording, just in case we've got 5 minutes left, just in case anybody's got any questions that are quite sensitive and they don't want recording.
Absolutely.
So I'll stop the recording now.